Honest to goodness, folks, we were way past due for a mock here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. So today we are doing a mock. But I want you guys to put your thinking caps on because this is not just, okay, let's watch Dan build a team. There is more at play here. And I'll explain that in just one second. Got to remind you guys, of course, first that this show is brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. And if you think you know your stuff, outstanding. Get in on Bet Online's $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. And when the game's over, head down to the online casino, play a little blackjack, a little poker, or over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. The mock starts in about 45 seconds. I have the 12th pick, but what I want you guys to pay attention to during today's mock draft is the players that are generally available near my choice. First of all, follow on Twitter at Dan Vespers. Follow Old Man Squad on Twitter, Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram for all the shorts we put out. Please hit the like button. Just take a second. There's thousands of you watching these videos right now, so just a small fraction of you guys, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you've been enjoying the content. If you're listening after the fact, throw that 5-star review while you're subscribing as well. The purpose of watching who's available is because that's how we're going to figure out who makes sense on our fantasy teams and can plan accordingly. We're going to do that again. By the way, I'm not going to read off every pick as we go, just as a little reminder here, because again, I want us to laser focus on the choices we have at the end of the first, end of the third, end of the 5th, 7th, 9th, etc. By the time you get to the 9th, 10th round, people start picking all over the map. It doesn't go numerically at that point, but near the beginning of the board and even through the middle, it goes generally, this is a little wobble on either side, in line with the board that Yahoo's presented. And it's why when Yahoo changes their board and the X ranks shift all around, it's so important for us to go back and say, okay, these are the guys that are generally there towards the ends of the round. These are the guys that are there in the middle of the rounds. These are the guys that are there at the beginning. If you have the first few picks, who's coming back to you in the second, who's there at the beginning of the third. This is how you start to game plan your path through a fantasy draft. It's why you do 1 to 2. I would recommend 2 mock drafts at each chunk. Not each slot, but each chunk. All right, it's coming up on me towards the end of the first round. Who's going to be left? Anthony Edwards is still on the board. Is George going to take Anthony Edwards, or is he going to take someone from beyond that? Who are my choices going to be? Who came off right before me? Halliburton at 8, Trae Young at, Embiid at 9, Trae Young 10, James Harden just goes at 11. So my choices are Anthony Edwards, Steph Curry, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, Domantas Sabonis, and so on and so forth. I don't really like these choices, but of these guys, I probably lean towards my personal preference. Steph, Donovan Mitchell, Sabonis, Booker are probably the clump of players I would look at in this group. Let's just go ahead and take Steph, and I got to make the next pick myself so that it doesn't set me on auto draft. Other choices, you could go there. You could go Sabonis, but then you're definitely punting steals. I'm just going to take the guys I like, and we'll worry about that other stuff later. So that's the chunk. James Harden, Trae Young just came off the board before me, but anything could happen there. So call it Harden, Steph, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards, Booker, Sabonis, LaMelo Ball, etc. That's who you're looking at the end of the first, beginning of the second round. My hope in that spot, so just if you want to mark this down, my hope is to get Harden and someone. I didn't get him here, so I had to pivot a little bit into 2 guards that neither one of whom is going to have the assist potential of Harden, but Donovan Mitchell gives me the nice steals that Steph doesn't. Scoring's going to be good. Threes are going to be good. Free throws are going to be good. Steals are okay. I shouldn't say great there. And assists are also going to be okay. So I have a few holes to address, and I will get to them in just a moment. I just realized that I forgot my water, so we're going to try to get a little bit longer here, and then at some point, That'll be the commercial break when Dano gets a sip. I got a drink, man. We're doing so many shows every day, and my kid's got a Little League game later on that if I don't hydrate, the voice simply won't make it. Let's see here. What do we got going on? So I think a lot of people would look at their team and say, all right, where do I excel? Where am I weak? I think the standings won't be super kind to me at this point because I did lean into more of a guard build. Steals are not great. Blocks are bad. Turnovers are sort of mid-pack. That's not that surprising. This team would not be outstanding in a head-to-head build. It's not well-rounded, so it's not going to score well on the roto side either. But my team is strong in free throw percent. My team is very good in threes. My team is very good in scoring, despite picking at the very end of the round. Assists are mid-pack. Steals are upper mid-pack. And turnovers are actually kind of mid-pack as well. So if I was building a head-to-head team, I'd be looking at trying to figure out what categories. Okay, great in free throws, great in threes, solid in points. I would probably take another guard that's a little more steals friendly, assists, steals kind of guard at the end of the third. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm paying attention to what players are available to me when the draft gets back around to me. Okay, this is like semi-recon mock, but not entirely. You guys are going to see me pick a couple of guys that I like. But it's really about looking and saying, okay, who do I think is going to be floating around for us now at picks 36 and 37? And after we get through those, we'll take that first commercial break so I can get a little bit of water. It's too much, I think, for me to try to pay attention to who's there at the beginnings and ends or, middle, beginning, end. Let's just focus on our area for this one. Because, again, if I was picking at 10, 11, or 12, my choice is pretty similar in each of those. You get a better opportunity in the first round. If I pick 10, I could still get Trae Young or James Harden there. They wouldn't have come off the board, but you also don't have the control over which guy you get coming back. So there's advantages, disadvantages. In this case, I think I'd rather just go earlier, but at least being on the turn, I can pick a couple of guys at the same time. All right, we're starting to get close to where we're at. Players that are still on the board, Lauri Markkanen, Alperen Şengün still there, interestingly, because Paolo Banchero went super early on what I assume is a punt team. Cade Cunningham, Freddie VanVleet, Jalen Williams. There goes Cade at 30. Jalen Johnson, Jaren Jackson Jr., a lot of J names in there. DeJounte Murray, Bam Adebayo, Evan Mobley, all still there. And I don't know that I'm intending on going any farther down the board than those guys at this spot. I think there's a little bit of a drop-off after Mobley. You could potentially put Desmond Bane and Jimmy Butler in that group as well. So this is now what we're looking at. And as it gets 1-2 picks closer, we just lost somebody. I think they must have lost their internet connection because they were there and then they dropped out. That's unfortunate. Hopefully they'll be back in the next little bit. These are all folks that join via the tweet I put out because I put this thing out like 15 minutes before it started. So no random Yahoo users were in this deal. So there goes VanVleet at 32. Any hopes we had of him slipping to 36 now gone. And again, drafting against folks that are my own Twitter followers, you can assume that a lot of the Dan Besbris targets are probably going to be gone. Jalen Williams goes at 33. Jaren Jackson Jr. at 34. The guys I would love... Now, I would have loved Jalen Williams and Freddie VanVleet to fall to me at 36. I don't think the odds are they're going to be there. My guess, and I would think typically Şengün goes earlier than this also. I would be hoping for some combination of Jalen Johnson, Evan Mobley, Desmond Bane. These are guys that I think are all very safe plays in this range. There goes Şengün. So very happy to get Jalen Johnson. He'd be my favorite guy to get here. I'm going to let the clock wind for a second while I talk. And then I don't have... the problem here is that if I was building a head-to-head team, I would have make sure to lean into more of that guard stuff. But I'm just going to take guys that I think are solid contributors. Like, I could have done Ja Morant in a weird build or whatever, but I'm not gonna. So Jalen Johnson is the first one. I'm debating between Evan Mobley and Desmond Bane. I think both these guys are going to be very, very good. I think do I want to go another big man? I could. Bane, similar. We'll go Mobley just for the hell of it. But that's generally the thought process here. It's not so much about the team build in this particular mock draft. We're watching who's around at our selections. So continue to note those clumps of players. And then the nice thing is we can loop back around afterward and say, you know what, if I had known these were the guys that were going to be there for me at the end of that round, and it doesn't match up perfectly with the X rank, then I could have created this team a little differently. But let's take a very fast commercial break while I sprint off and get a glass of water. Realizing that he forgot to mute himself on the audio recording. YouTubers didn't hear me sprinting across the room, clearing my throat and banging into my chair. Everybody else listening on iTunes and Spotify did. And we'll see if old Dano can edit that one out. Let's give the YouTubers a look at the draft board right now. And you can see, again, looking back at that first grouping, Harden, Steph, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Domantas Sabonis. That was kind of like the grouping there. What do you want to put together in that chunk? Third, fourth round. I think I got a mosquito bite. That's unfortunate. JJJ, Markkanen probably slips to there, if not for the auto pick, and maybe that's bought me Jalen Johnson in this particular draft. But call it Markkanen. Cade sometimes goes a little later. JJJ, Jalen Johnson, Evan Mobley, Adebayo, Bane, DeJounte Murray. That's kind of your like grouping of 6 or 7 guys that you're going to be looking at. And I would say just order those guys. Like you can really simplify your draft day strategy this way by saying, all right, here's my order of the 6 or 7 guys that tend to be available some of the time in this group. Okay, great. As soon as you get your draft position, like let's say you're in a Yahoo Public League where you get your draft slot a half an hour before the draft goes, great. Okay, you find out you have the 11th pick, pull up your paper that has, the back chunk listing on it. Say, all right, first grouping. I'm looking at Trae Young, Embiid, Harden, Steph, Donovan Mitchell, LaMelo, Anthony Edwards, Sabonis. That's my 8 picks there. And just order them. Here's how I like these guys. And then when your turn comes up, you almost don't even really need to think about it. Same thing for the next grouping. All right, here's the guys. Markkanen, Jalen Williams, Jalen Johnson, JJJ, Şengün, Mobley, Adebayo, Murray, Desmond Bane. It's like nine names or something like that. Okay, order those 9. Okay? I know we're going to be 60 picks in soon, but you guys only have to worry about ranking like 25 of them because there's 30 to 40 of those names that just aren't going to be available by you. Simplify. That is the move here in fantasy basketball. How do we make this job easier? And it's the flip side. If you have the front end, if you have the first 4 picks, a lot of the guys that I'm talking about right now, they aren't going to be there for your turn. You don't have to worry about them. James Harden ain't getting you to the end of the second round. Rank the guys that you think have a chance to get to you. All right, here we come. End of the 5th, beginning of the 6th. Guys that are still on the board. Zion. By the way, Emmanuel quickly went at 53. Isaiah Hartenstein went at 52. What are you doing, people? Guys, come on. Guys. Come on. Anyway, Zion, Miles Bridges, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Brandon Miller, Bradley Beal, Vooch, Tobias Harris, Mikal Bridges. These are the guys that are floating around. D'Angelo Russell, if you wanted to go a little farther. Vooch and Zion just came off the board. Okay, so we've got about 10 players that we should be considering in this range. 60 and 61. How do we think about them? Again, I'm not worried about my team right now. That's not what this mock is about. I'm not trying to show you guys how to build the perfect team. As Jordan Poole goes up 59. Okay. There are a lot of guys in here that I think are pretty good. Tobias Harris, Bradley Beal, Miles Bridges is actually going to probably be fine. DeMar DeRozan, Mikal Bridges, D'Lo. I got a queue of, 6 guys in here that I'm all interested in. Who do I want at 60? Who would be my favorite in this group? Probably DeMar DeRozan. And then at 61, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Again, I'm not trying to show you guys the world's greatest beat the world team. I'm going to not go Beal because of injury risk. Bridges, Harris, other Bridges, D'Lo. Again, not really worried about my team. Who do I think has the best shot to produce in this group? Probably either D'Lo or Tobias. Do I even have a center yet? Yeah, I do. I got a couple. All right, we'll go D'Angelo Russell there. I don't care. Again, not worried about my actual team build, and I'm sure it's god-awful, right? I'm sure my team is trash. Because I'm not even thinking about what I've done before. I'm just talking about the guys that are available near this particular spot. And the beauty part is this job actually gets easier as you move through the draft. Because at the beginning of the board, when it's going a little bit more in numerical order, there are also probably fewer players that you want at that spot because the gap between players is larger. Once you get to this juncture, 60, 61, how many? There were like 8. That put 6 guys in my queue, and there were way more than that I was interested in that had recently come off the board. Not a ton, I guess, because I felt like that's too early for Jordan Poole. We've jumped to the shark. Vooch, you could have put in that pocket as well. I'm good with him around 60. Jalen Duren around 60. I'm good with Hartenstein coming off really early. Just meant that he wasn't a player I had to think about. But because everybody's starting to get wild and woolly by the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, more of the guys that we are eyeballing that are near that area in X rank are still on the board. We don't have to go reaching. Guys are just going to be there. Who do I think, like, I would think that under normal circumstances, DeMar probably isn't going to be there at pick 60, but, today's an indicator. Put him on that little grouping. Hartenstein usually will be, by the way. So maybe that's the biggest flip-flop. Assumed DeMar would have been gone. He wasn't. Assumed Hartenstein would have been there. He wasn't. But again, what's that list? Okay. Guys that we think will be available towards the end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th. Hartenstein, Vooch, maybe DeMar, doubt it. D'Lo, Mikal Bridges, Tobias Harris, Miles Bridges, Bradley Beal. It's kind of the 8 guys you could probably rank in that group. I'd probably go Hartenstein, then DeRozan, then D'Lo. One of the two, Tobias and the 2 Bridges are relatively close. Beal's probably my last in that group just because, again, hasn't really been able to last a season in a while. All right. Luckily, while we were, muttering, tumbling along here, the draft continues. Sadly, Thomas never returned. Got off to such a promising start and now has taken every small forward in the league. Oh, Thomas, your auto picks have been hilarious. Oh, Jonathan Kuminga going real early. Early 7th round. 75. Zubats at 74. This is the problem with drafting against people that listen to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. This is too early, guys. I know I've talked about dudes being my target, not Kuminga, but like Zubats. If you take him 2 rounds before where he's going in drafts, he's no longer that exciting of a player. Confounded mosquito. That itches. Not cool, bud. Bogdan Bogdanovic at 78. Now we're starting to... we should go back to the player list so we can kind of see who's floating around. Valanciunas, 84, would have been a guy I probably would have had on the list. Zubats, I think, generally goes later. Austin Reeves just went at 80. Bogdanovic at 78. Other names now. So those are the ones that are off the board, and Michael Porter Jr. are all guys that I probably would have considered here. This is getting a little hairy, but Cam Thomas now has been on the board for so long that he is now in the mix. Josh Giddey, I don't mind at 84. Vassell, I don't want. I have no intention of drafting Brandon Ingram in almost any draft, but at 84, there go Giddey and Thomas, by the way. Ingram, he's fine there. Colin Sexton is fine there. And if we start to look a little bit farther down the board, I don't know if I want to go Caruso at 84, but you could throw him in the mix a little early on McCollum. So this is now where things are getting a little bit goofy because most of my targets, people that I've talked about in the show, are getting scooped up by people who listen to the show. Luckily, there are a couple of names left as Walker Kessler went at 83. That's wild, man. You're trying to game plan it out a little bit. Brandon Ingram at 84 is totally fine. I have no problem with this. Again, he's not a guy that I'm targeting, but this is where he should probably be going, so that's fine. I don't know that anybody that I've got on my list is what I'd call a big leaper at this point, so we'll go Ingram, and that'll buy us a few seconds just to look at some of the other names. Do I want to go reaching for any of these guys? Probably not. I'm going to hold my breath that some of these names I'm looking at actually make it back to me. Odds are they won't. But now it's Sexton or Caruso. We'll go Colin Sexton, and I'll go steals hunting in the next one. That's fine. This plan of having the guys that we should assess is probably not as illuminating. I thought it would go to like the 9th round before it went off the rails, but it's a little bit off the rails here at the 7th because I've got a draft of listeners taking all of the guys I like, near 100. Walker Kessler, a great example of that. Reeves, Bogdanovich, Zubats. These are guys that I thought would be on the board at 84, 85. And so, again, this is why you sort of expand the player pool. So for the 7th, 8th round, if you're near the back end of it, you need to expand the number of players you're thinking about. I don't think Anunoby's making it there, but Zubats should be on your list there. Michael Porter Jr., Valanciunas, Bogdanovich, Reeves. I would have assumed Giddey would have been gone. And technically he was by the time it got to me. Same with Cam Thomas. But apparently Walker Kessler, Ingram, Sexton, Caruso still on the board. Jakob Poeltl, we could probably have thrown in there. I went right past Poeltl. So that was more like 10, 11 names. They're getting longer. There were only like 5 or 6 at the end of the first round we were thinking of. There were 7 or 8 at the end of the second round, 8 or 9 at the end of third, 8 or 9 end of the 5th round. Now, end of the 7th, 10, 11 players. By the end of this next round, you don't want to do it this way. It's no longer like, oh, here are the guys that are going to be there at the end of the 9th round. It's going to be whoever. So don't worry about the board anymore. Just look at guys you like. Because by the end of the 9th round, we're past pick 100. There's literally no way to predict who's going to be on the board for you at pick 108 and 109. None. It's going to depend entirely on the 11 other teams in your draft. Whereas first, third, 5th rounds kind of doesn't matter who else is in your draft. You can predict pretty reliably the 6 to 8 players that are going to be available to you at the end of those drafts. But you're seeing it now. By the end of the 7th, it started to get wacky. Again, that's just because of how this particular mock is composed. But by the end of the 9th, even if this was a mock with randos, I don't think you're going to know who's going to be there. So now your job is not to figure out the 8 or 9 players that you need to rank and get into your queue for that grouping. It's to literally scan the board for the guy you think is ranked the highest. Now you're really just plucking your favorites. There goes Caruso finally at 95. I didn't think he was going mid-80s, but obviously wasn't making it back to 108. So who the hell's left here? I like Jalen Suggs. I like Draymond Green. I don't like Kobe White, but at 108, I'd be cool with it. Okongwu being a little bit banged up right now is not my favorite. He's dealing with a toe thing. I would probably lean away from that. Chris Paul at 108, I'm good with. Derek Lively, Naz Reid, Tyus Jones, all pretty good there. How far down the board do we need to go here? Not much farther. Yahoo's done a nice little readjustment for us. Mike Conley, I don't really want to go that early on him. So maybe we loop back around and hope that one of these 5 guys makes it, but they might not. So perhaps we need to be a little bit better about this. Okay, let's go back up. Let's do our next pass. Bronny James. You jerk. Who the hell took that guy? TJ, you scumbag. There goes Lively. I have no intention of drafting Yusuf Nurkic or Keegan Murray, but those 2 guys are still on the board. So is Trey Murphy. And I know that there's injury stuff going on. I don't want Trey Murphy because there's a legitimate thing going on. Nurk sounds like he's going to be closer. But, like, if Keegan Murray's still there past 100, you do it. John Collins is a pass now with Kessler getting the starting job, it seems like. Scanning a little farther down the board if we have to do some digging. There goes Nurk. There goes Draymond. I don't want these guys. These guys are not dudes I want to take at 9-10. I should have better choices than that. Well, provided any one of these three guys takes one dude that's not in my queue, then I'm okay. If they straight up take my queue, then I'm screwed. But again, well, there goes Keegan. All right, that's one down. I don't want Middleton if it's head-to-head. Games Caparoto, I'll be taking Middleton here. Just throw that in your thing. Trey Murphy goes. Okay, that saves us. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. So Chris Paul, Naz Reid, Tyus Jones. I don't think I'm going to double up on the low-scoring, hyper-efficient point guards unless I have to. So hopefully George takes not Naz Reid. And then we can pretty much just chat. All right, there goes Middleton. So who do I want between Chris Paul and Tyus Jones? I'm definitely taking Naz. I think there's some upside there at 108. And now I want a super efficient point guard who's better equipped to survive the season. That's Tyus Jones. Who does better on a game-to-game basis? It's Chris Paul. My team is not painfully old in this league, so we're going to go CP3 because I just think his role is safer. But I like both of those guys. And now the long haul back to the end of the 11th round, it doesn't matter at this point. This is a mock draft. End of the 11th round, I don't think anybody's really going to be left for me. So I'm not even going to bother setting a queue yet. But that was a goofy one, right? Because basically the whole board, now you're starting to just take guys out of the list. I took Colin Sexton in the beginning of the 8th round. And from that point on, it was just like, all right, who am I not interested in? Or would I have made a big stretch play instead of Ingram or Sexton if I knew that, say, I don't think I thought any of these guys was going to make it back to me. Gafford, Amen Thompson were the two where I was like, maybe in a crazy universe, if this wasn't an old man squad mock, could one of those guys make it back to 108? Yeah, Amen Thompson, Daniel Gafford, those are the ones that I thought had any prayer of making it back. I didn't think anybody else on the list that I liked had a legitimate shot to make it me a 108. Besides Thompson, Gafford, maybe you could say like Draymond and Lively, because they'll bounce around a little bit, but probably not. And so, like, those two guys weren't there. That meant that I had Keegan Murray, apparently, Naz Reid, Chris Paul, Tyus Jones, before I went down to the next tier of guys. It's hard to be at the end of the round, but also I would suggest that in a public draft, a lot of these guys would have pushed later, and Jalen Green probably goes earlier, and I don't know how much of a difference it makes for me getting Naz Reid, Chris Paul, or whoever else I wanted. Who do we think would have fallen a little bit more? Would Herb Jones have fallen? Maybe not. Anywho, again, I think the main takeaway here from that part of the draft is just that you can no longer really make any kind of educated guess on who's going to be there for your team. You just don't know. Let's zoom in just the tiniest bit here so you guys can read the names better. I'm not sure that there's a point in finishing this mock draft. I'm going to do it just because screw it, I'm here. Like, what does it hurt for me to do another 5 or 6 minutes of mock drafting? And you guys can watch the late Flyers episode. There goes Dyson Daniels at 123, Josh Hart at 122. So here's my Flyers. Cam Johnson is on there. Zach Edey's on there. Trace Jackson Davis is on there. PJ Washington. Norman Powell's sort of like your warm play to start the year. Conley, I think, is better than that. Conley's just a regular, plodding, useful player this year. Andrew Wiggins has an outside shot. There goes Conley, so that one was dead. Dante DiVincenzo, KCP. I don't really much care for Grayson Allen. Jonathan Isaac, if you're in a games cap format. Dennis Schroeder, if you're hunting points and assists. Ben Simmons, Scoot Henderson, Gary Trent Jr. These guys are all potential late Flyer types. And then like Tari Eason, and if you wanted to go all the way to like 350, you could find Noah Clowney. TJ McConnell. There aren't many past this point. Clowney, if we got to scroll that far. But these are basically most of the late flyer types. Taylor Hendricks came off the board. He's one. There goes Scoot. But again, like, what am I trying to do here? Who do I actually want from this list? I don't know. Not many of them. You go Norm and try to get that hot start to the year. If Kawhi misses time, you go Marcus Smart and try to catch the steals wave, or Schroeder catch the assist wave. There goes RJ Barrett, despite his sprained shoulder. We'll go Marcus Smart for one of them. I'll get a nice big steals bucket. And then do I want to go Norm and treat it like a heater? Or do I think that any of these guys has a chance to actually be good all year? Not really. Ugh. Sort of grossness. We'll go Norm. I'll just go for some scoring. We'll go for some efficient scoring there. I don't care. I mean, you guys like, what's the difference? So here's the thing. Like, late flyers, you can get caught up in wondering what your team needs. If you have a particular punt build, that changes how you can look at the late flyers also. You know, like if and Scoot didn't make it to me. He was off the board already. But like, I would have taken Scoot at the 9-10 range if I was punting field goal and turnovers, because he's not going to get back to you in the 130s. Keontae George went in that range also. So like, you got to go 9th, 10th round if you want those guys in your particular punt build. But I didn't have that punt build, so nanner. Didn't need them. Other possible punt types. If I was punting points on this team, I don't think I would have gone Norman Powell. If I was punting steals, I certainly wouldn't have gone Marcus Smart. Zach Edey is an interesting one. If you need a center that's not going to play a ton, but also isn't horrible at free throw shooting. And I mean, I don't know if any of the guys I have in my queue are going to make it back to me at the end of the 13th round. But guess what? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're going to drop that pick. 98% chance you drop that pick. I think like 1 out of my 10 leagues, someone kept their 13th rounder the whole year. It's an incredibly low percentage, even more so than the 12th. And I don't know that anybody I've seen in this 12th round is going to be held all year. Someone's going to hold on to Klay Thompson all season, even if he's terrible. Name power forces you into a weird spot. So while this thing is floating back and forth and we don't care a ton about it, let's remember again, and I'll zoom in on the board, but while we talk about it, if we're looking at, let's close this out so you folks can see more what I'm looking at here. So first, second round, guys available at the back end there. You're looking at Trae Young, James Harden, Steph Curry, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards, Domantas Sabonis. That's probably the group you're picking from. Maybe LaMelo Ball. Maybe, did I say Embiid? Maybe Embiid if he and Trae or he and Harden flip-flop a little bit. And third, beginning fourth, you're looking at Jalen Johnson. I don't think Şengün makes it there most of the time, but let's put Şengün in there. JJJ, Markkanen, sometimes Van Vliet, sometimes Cade, Mobley, Bam, DeJounte, and Bane. So something in that like 7 to 9 players range. And 5, beginning 6, you're looking at typically Hardenstein, Vooch, DeMar, doubt it, but he made it there this time. D'Lo, McHale, and Miles Bridges, Tobias Harris, maybe Bradley Beal, something like that. And 7, beginning 8, you're starting to get into a real funky spot where you're looking at like Zubats, Valanciunas, more so Roto, but yeah, Michael Porter Jr., Bogdan Bogdanovic, Reeves, or was Reeves 5th? I doubt Giddey makes it that far. Cam Thomas, unlikely to make it that far. I don't want Ingram, but if he's there, then you saw him pop up. Sexton, similar situation. Both those guys will be fine, but not really targets. And you could throw Jakob Poeltl probably into that mix as well. Interestingly, a couple of my Q guys actually did make it to me at 156. I don't know if anybody took Clowney, but he'd be another one you could throw in there. And then again, by rounds 9, 10, 11, 12, there's no point in assessing everybody. There's absolutely no. Clowney went at 150, by the way. So Schroeder or McConnell. McConnell, certainly the better choice if you're trying to just amass 9 category value. Schroeder is the punt field goal option. We'll just go Schroeder just because it's more interesting. I don't even want to know how Yahoo thinks my team did, but I'm going to look at it anyway. Oh, the worst. You know what? I don't care. That's the thing. I wasn't trying to draft an actual team here, which I realize sounds stupid. But this mock draft was just looking at who was available. I'll admit, this particular time, I don't think this team is all that great. I think it's better than what Yahoo thinks it is. But it also isn't that impressive of a basketball team. I shirked on my duties of getting any big men. Evan Mobley is the only center eligible player on the team, obviously. Or that's not true. Naz Reid as well. Not much in the way of rebounding. Blocks are fine. Turnovers are actually not horrible, but not great either. I don't know that I agree with this. Blocks are dead last because I didn't draft anybody late that could block a shot. Assists pretty good. Steals pretty good. Boards terrible. Points fine. Threes pretty good. Free throw pretty good. Field goal ended up being lower pack. So, I mean, obviously, if I was doing this draft for real, I would have been looking at my team and saying, oh, crap, like, I'm not taking Chris Paul, Marcus Smart, Norman Powell, and Dennis Schroeder as the last four. You're taking a big man in there. So I probably would have gone, where's a big man that I could have done? Not many left, I guess, at that point. It would have been a little bit earlier. It probably would have been instead of Ingram or Sexton, I would have gone Purtle. Easy flip. And Walker Kessler almost definitely would have been there if I wasn't in an old man squad draft. Or some combination of Kessler, Zubats, Pirtle, and Valanciunas. I don't think one of those four guys would have been left at 84. I think you're looking at least two or three of those in most public drafts. So I'm not worried about that part. I know my team is bad, but I wasn't what I was trying to do. This is an exercise in who's going to be there at the ends of odd-numbered. So basically, if you have a late pick. The next thing we're going to do, and we'll do it probably tomorrow, is instead of doing the live mock and seeing it and having to make these choices in real time, I'm going to give you guys my favorites from each of that chunk. And that would be the optimum way to put that team together. So that'll be another My Perfect Draft episode, but it'll be for late slots. So picks like, 10 through 12 kind of thing instead of mid-round. I think that should be fun and kind of an interesting exercise also. All right, done with this mock. We learned a lot. There was a little bit of recon to it, a little bit of actual pick to it. Terrible team build, absolute dog do. So don't worry about that part. But I'm Dan Bespris. Thank you again for watching, everybody. Twofer continues. We'll have two more tomorrow. Talking to Alex Rickling, by the way, tomorrow morning. And then we'll take a look at how to actually put together some of those late, who do we think is really going to get to you towards the end. And we can refer back to this one if you guys want. But that should be, I think, a lot of fun. At Dan Bespris over on Twitter, at Old Man Squad on Twitter, Old Man Squad Fantasy on Instagram. Hit that like button on the way out. If you want to comment, great. Please help each other out in the comments because, again, I am now not able to keep up the way I want to. I'm getting to, I think, everybody, but it's like 2 days later. Subscribe, if I forgot to say it. Check out our sponsors. There's a few of them now. And, 5-star review. Please do that, too. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody. Root on my kids' Little League team wherever you might be, and I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. So long for now.